Dear friends, many years ago, Ann Landers, a Chicago syndicated columnist, printed a letter in her column that made a lot of people to stop and think. The letter was from a person in Missouri who was concerned at the growing number of people in the United States who are not exercising their right to vote. Their excuse is, my vote doesn't matter, so why bother? And because these people have stopped voting, they also have stopped paying attention to the national issues or the candidates. Let me share with you some examples of how important a single vote has been in our nation's history. Had it not been for one vote in 1776, our official language in the United States would be German, not English. Had it not been for one vote in 1845, the state of Texas would not be part of our country. Had it not been for one vote in 1868, Andrew Johnson would have been impeached as the President of the United States. And there are many more examples. So the point is very clear. One person's exercise of the right to vote can make a difference in our lives and can change the world forever. Today's gospel contains a crucial message for each one of us and for every Christian. Jesus makes it very clear that we possess a dual citizenship. We are citizens of two worlds. We are citizens of the earth and citizens of the heaven. Now, because of our dual citizenship, we have also responsibilities towards both the worlds, towards God and toward Caesar. These two obligations are like two sides of the same coin. A failure in our duty as citizens can also be a failure in our duty as Christians. For we have a serious responsibility to keep the administration of our nation from falling into the unqualified hands of our leaders. Referring to this responsibility, St. Peter, in his first letter to the Christian community of his time, writes this: have reverence for God and respect for the emperor. This leads us to an important consideration. What happens if our dual citizenship causes some kind of conflict between our God and our country? We hope this doesn't happen, but if it does, we must resolve the conflict in such a way that we remain faithful to the obligation, and our primary obligation is to God. The question about taxes in today's gospel is asked not in good faith, but to discredit Jesus. It was a trap from the Pharisees. If the Lord said, pay the taxes, the Pharisees would call him a traitor to the Jewish people. If the Lord said, on the other hand, don't pay the taxes, Herod's people would call him as a traitor to the king of Rome. Jesus recognizes this trap and gives them the famous reply that is valid for all through the centuries. The Lord said, repay to Caesar what belongs to him, and to God what belongs to God. In the Middle Ages, people said the church and state are to be one. And now we say that the church and state have to be separate. Today, as we all know, the relationship is neither complete union or a total separation, but it is a kind of collaboration between the two. Here we must realize that church is the voice of conscience, and that is what we are called to follow. The church has the voice to question the policies where gospel values are at stake, because government policies have moral implications in our life. It can build or weaken our families. It can protect or destroy human life. It can enhance or eliminate human rights. It can support or prevent our practice of religion. In short, Jesus is telling us, let Caesar be Caesar, but let God be God. Dear friends, at the end of our life, when we stand before God, we will be responsible for the moral choices we have made as Christians. Not to Caesar, not to any world leaders, but to God, our Creator. And so, let us hope and pray that this dual citizenship never comes into conflict in our conscience. But if it ever does, we must resolve it without compromising our obligation to God our Father. And that is what St. Thomas More did in 1534. St. Thomas More was the Lord Chancellor of England. He was the second most powerful person in the country. But when he was asked by his king, Henry VIII, to choose between God and his king, he refused to obey the king. Thomas remained steadfast to his faith and to his obligation to God. Before his public execution for disobeying his king, he said these words, "I die as the king's good servant, but God's first." Let me repeat that. I die as the king's good servant, but God's first. I think that must be our motto in our life too.